The yearly gathering of the Wilson family was precisely as stifling as I had recalled. In my aunt's big home, crystal chandeliers glittered above, reflecting designer gowns and luxury watches. The strange blend of luxury scent and arrogance that seemed to accompany my family wherever they go permeated the air. Perched in the corner, seeing my relatives vying for attention, with tales of their most recent successes, was me. Selected to help me fade into the background, my basic black dress felt like protection against their scrutiny. The voice of my Aunt Patricia pierced through the commotion. "Still working as a secretary, sweetheart. I almost missed you there." I sipped a little champagne, covering my grin with the glass. "Administrative assistant. Really? Oh." She lifted a nicely groomed eyebrow. "Still in that little consulting company?" It was termed once again, "What?" I answered softly from Summit Solutions. Fresh from becoming partner at his father's law office, my cousin Ethan couldn't resist joining in. "Join me, Liv. I may arrange for you a legitimate employment with significant career possibilities." Not the well-kept cover I displayed. I considered the stack of contracts waiting for my signature back at my office, my actual workplace. "Thanks. I'm glad where I am right now." "Content?" One could cut glass with Aunt Patricia's laugh. "Darling, you have great potential wasted. You're still pushing paper for someone else. Your relatives are all executives, partners, actual business people. Just knowing that someone else was me would help." 10 years ago, in this exact mansion, I began to build my empire in secret. Novel out of business school, armed with an MBA and a novel strategy for reorganizing failed businesses, months of refining my pitch were spent under the belief that my family's extensive commercial ties would propel my career forward. Rather, they giggled. "See consulting?" Uncle Robert had laughed at it. "Leave it to the large companies, sweetheart. Come along with the family company. Begin in the mailroom. Proceed like everyone else, working your way up." Everyone else meant my male relatives, of course. The Wilson family defined success very precisely and underlined strong management. Through a series of businesses, each led by a well-selected male heir, they had amassed their money. Women were supposed to either occupy inferior roles or marry advantageously. There is nothing more. That evening, I took 2 choices that would fundamentally alter everything. First, I would start my own business independent of their knowledge or support. Second, I would make every contemptuous phrase cause for sorrow. Summit Solutions started off in a small office located above a Chinese restaurant. My quite meager resources paid the rent. Still, I had something much more important than riches. How businesses operated, how they failed, and most crucially, how to correct them. One of my first customers was a tiny manufacturing company on near bankruptcy. Every significant consulting company in the city had turned down the owner. I worked 3 months reorganizing their activities, simplifying procedures, and dealing with creditors. 6 months later, they were once more lucrative. Quietly, word of the enigmatic consulting company that may salvage failing businesses got out throughout business circles. I recruited carefully, selecting those with my vision and taste. Every staff member signed iron-tight NDAs. On all public records, my name never showed up. I was only the executive director. I stayed undercover as a low-level employee while Summit Solutions developed. Even when we built a modern downtown headquarters, I maintained the little office above the restaurant. When family members inquired about my employment, I spoke of routine administrative chores and saw their eyes glaze over with apathy. The fraud went beyond just pride. That was strategy. The foundation of the Wilson family's commercial success was buying faltering businesses at rock-bottom rates. Saving the similar businesses before they became targets for hostile acquisitions was my area of expertise. Working in the shadows, we silently stopped my family's predatory activities and started our own successful path. 10 years later, Summit Solutions was among the most powerful consulting companies available. Our offices were in 12 different locations. Our client list included Fortune 500 firms, and we had a reputation for converting failed companies into success stories. Not one of my grinning relatives knew either. More champagne, sweetie? The voice of Aunt Patricia grabbed me back to the present. Though maybe you should keep to water, I see little place for costly preferences in your pay. I grinned practicedly and took the champagne. We appreciate you, Aunt Patricia. How is the new purchase by Uncle Robert progressing? William's production, then, was not quite perfect. Her grin slipped just a little. Some complications have occurred. Of course, nothing Robert cannot manage. She had no idea, however, that those issues were my doing. My uncle's aggressive takeover effort had focused on William's manufacturing. Desperate for assistance 3 months ago, they contacted Summit Solutions. Now they were following our reorganizing scheme. Their stock price was soaring, and Uncle Robert's effort to take over was collapsing. My cousin Ethan said, presumably throwing good money after bad. I heard they hired some consulting business. Those consultants are exactly the same. Big promises, no outcome. I concealed another grin. The cost of rescuing Williams Manufacturing from Summit Solutions exceeded what Ethan would earn at his father's company in 5 years. Oh, yes. One company? Summit anything? He waved contemptuously. Nobody really significant. According to Dad, their CEO won't even make appearances. Possibly some trust money child playing at company. My phone buzzed in my handbag. From my real helper, a note. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., an emergency meeting. Representatives of Wilson Ventures seeking merger talks, Rebrew, Williams Manufacturing. Right now, we need an urgent reaction. Twice I went over the message, realizing something. With Williams Manufacturing, they were at last acknowledging defeat. They had failed to buy the business and were now looking for a merger, which would need Williams Consulting Company's clearance. My company. My family would attend a meeting tomorrow morning, hoping to strong-arm their way into a merger. Rather, they would discover they were confronting the secretary they had fired 10 years before. Except I would not be bringing coffee. Perched at the head of the tables, would be me. Everything well, darling? Seeing my attitude, Aunt Patricia questioned. I offered her my most brilliant grin after finishing my champagne. Perfect, really. I ought to go back home. Tomorrow's early meeting. Oh, noting something for someone very significant. Something like as that? I answered, already choosing my outfit. That absolutely is what I mean. I stood in my own elevator, rising to the executive level of Summit Solutions early the following morning. The basic black outfit from last night's reunion was gone. Today, I donned a custom channel suit in deep blue, a strong hue for a power move. Maya, my assistant, stood with a tablet and knowing grin at the elevator entrance. The crew of Wilson Ventures showed there early. She showed up while we were walking. Your uncle most definitely looks very nervous to meet Summit's CEO. I looked at my reflection from a glass wall. Correct. They're in the main conference room? Indeed, including Mr. Harrison of Williams Manufacturing. Maya's eyes shone with expectation. There also is your cousin, Ethan. He apparently insisted on personally managing the legal elements. I grinned, thinking about Ethan's patronizing offer of a real job only yesterday. Other from the family? Who else? Though she isn't formally attending the conference, your Aunt Patricia attended as moral support, and James, your cousin, is covering Wilson Ventures' financial division. Ideal listeners. I looked at my watch. 8:57 a.m. Were they given coffee? Your aunt said nobody was present to serve it. Maya started to smile more broadly. I let them know the administrative assistant will be here soon. I practically laughed. I had been the unseen support staff member for many years, accompanying family members on office visits. They never gave the calm lady who delivered their coffee or outerwear serious inspection. That had been the ideal cover. "Give me 2 minutes," I said, then introduced the contracts. The thick doors of the meeting room let me hear conversations. The piercing chuckle of Aunt Patricia, the authoritarian voice of my uncle, Ethan's arrogant remarks. I inhaled deeply, then pushed the doors open. The talk came to an end rather suddenly, apparently assuming the power posture. My uncle sat at one end of the long table. Ethan and James surrounded him in ostentatious outfits that shouted family money. Aunt Patricia sat next, carefully looking at her manicure with trained indifference. Looking uncomfortable, Mr. Harrison from Williams Manufacturing sat by himself on the opposite side. Aunt Patricia sighed last of all. "Coffee has been on our waiting list for—" She paused, really staring at me for the first time. "Olivia's? You are wearing what? And why are you not bringing coffee?" Walking gently to the head of the table, the seat exactly opposite Uncle Robert, Aunt Patricia, I no longer pour coffee. Actually, I seldom ever actually did. "What is this?" Demand was made by Uncle Robert, the CEO of Summit. Where is he? We were assured of meeting the real decision-maker. "You have been." I took a seat and found great delight in their facial uncertainty. Summit Solutions is headed by myself. I have been since I started the business 10 years ago. The quiet that followed was intolerable. Ethan opened and closed his lips like a fish out of its natural habitat. James let go with his pen. The well-kept calmness of Aunt Patricia broke. First recovering was Uncle Robert, whose face became crimson. "Absurdity resides here. Your name is Secretary." "No," I responded gently. That served as the cover, apparently because none of you have ever looked beyond it. A very successful one. You never recognized I already was. You were so afraid I would fail. Maya picked that point to enter, carrying a stack of contracts. She moved quickly, then replaced her standing behind my chair. I then went over these records, which detail the conditions Summit Solutions will take into account in deciding whether to approve Wilson Ventures' merger with Williams Manufacturing. "Think about approving," Ethan said, sputter. "You cannot be genuine." Right then, this is a joke. Some type of sophisticated practical joke. I grabbed my phone and showed the wall screen Summit's most recent financial results. Right now, Summit Solutions oversees client assets at about $12 billion. Our permission is needed for any significant company structure modifications to Williams Manufacturing. We have a 94% success record in corporate restructuring. I grinned at my startled cousins. "To you, does it appear like a joke?" Aunt Patricia muttered, unable of this. "You are absolutely nothing. You have always been nothing." You were supposed to think just like that. I looked over to Mr. Harrison. "Would you want to tell my family why you turned down Wilson Ventures' first offer in favor of Summit Solutions?" Straightening in his chair, Mr. Harrison. "The reputation of Summit is unmatched. Summit's reorganizing strategy rescued our business when Wilson Ventures tried a hostile takeover. Since using their techniques, we have raised earnings by 47%. Plan for restructuring James seems about to pass out. The scheme that wrecked our effort at acquisition? That was you, among other things. I started counting cases on my fingers. Peterson Electronics, the company you sought to buy last year. Maritime Shipping, about which you underbid last quarter. The Davidson Group, which oddly came back just before you could buy them out. I pushed onward. I have been discreetly opposing every predatory acquisition effort your organization has undertaken for 10 years. The face of Uncle Robert had become shockingly purple. You actively undermined family businesses. I corrected. No. I started my own firm, one that supports businesses in surviving rather than consuming them for components. The fact that it clashed with your plans was just karmic bonus. This is crazy. Rising to his feet, Ethan said, I'm giving our attorneys a call. Ethan, sit down. His freeze came from my voice, which exuded power. Those contracts, the ones your company spent months seeking for this conference, truly should be read in front of you. I saw on his face awareness dawn. Correct. Biggest customer of your legal company this year. That was me too. Maya moved on, carrying yet another paper. Summit's present market situation and liquid assets are summed below. Should we so choose, we now find ourselves in a position to buy controlling shares in Wilson Ventures. The space collapsed in anarchy. Aunt Patricia was almost having hyperventilation. James was furiously reviewing the numbers on his phone. Looking shell-shocked, Ethan had sunk back into his chair. This is blackmail, Uncle Robert yelled. Quietly, no, I said. We are business here. I never could handle the kind you taught me. I got up, straightening my jacket. You have 5 o'clock to go. Today, to go over the merger conditions. Given our situation, they are rather charitable. Should you turn down, Summit Solutions will start open market buying of Wilson Ventures shares tomorrow morning. I went for the door, then stopped. Oh, and Aunt Patricia, I own the vineyard that makes the champagne you so kindly offered last night. Acquired it last year. That chain, too, the coffee you so sorely needed this morning. I gracedly grinned. Actually, my pay does allow for costly preferences. After all, closing behind me on their shocked expressions was the door. I at last let myself a time to gather what had just transpired in my private office. 10 years of deliberate dishonesty, of hiding underachievers, had brought around this point. Maya showed in with a real cup of coffee, my preferred mix from my own chain. Was the waiting well worth it? I considered all the times I had spent serving coffee in this same workplace, seeing my family discount me, write me off as nothing more than a secretary. My phone buzzed one every single second. Notes were flooding in from relatives who had to have heard about the conference. I muted it without turning around. They would have enough time to absorb their changed world. Right now I ran an empire, and for the first time in 10 years, I could at last do it free from disguising who I truly was. When a family focused on appearances suddenly finds they are no longer at the top of the food chain, the following 48 hours precisely what one would anticipate. Almost right away after the conference, the messages began to arrive. Sister Patricia, sweetheart, let's talk about this over lunch. Your always was my favorite niece. Come on, lived Ethan. We were only fooling around. Family should remain together. James, you are not doing this for us. Our blood is what we are. I paid attention to the fast-fire emails from Wilson Ventures board members instead of them all. They weren't foolish. They could watch the direction the wind was blowing. They had set an emergency board meeting at noon. By 3, they had voted to approve Summit's conditions of merger. Uncle Robert, usually, did not go silently. You have turned on this family. His voice rang over my workplace as he stormed in unexpectedly. Maya stood to step in, but I waved her off. Let him shine at his time. Actually, without glancing up from my computer, I would say I picked some lessons from this family. Is this not just what you taught us? Take control, eradicate rivals, never exhibit weakness. We handed you everything that brought me laughter. You handed me less than nothing. I would develop something better because you showed me that I would never be good enough, and that my only worth was in helping the family's men. I gazed up at him at last, after fooling everyone for 10 years. You saw precisely what you expected to see. A calm, unassuming lady knowing her place, by allowing you fool yourself. That was not my error. That was yours. The conflict appeared to sapse him quickly. Looking older than I had ever seen him, he dropped into one of my visiting seats. Why should you now show yourself? You may have kept on covert operations, given time. I closed my laptop. You're seeking to buy Williams Manufacturing, among other businesses. Among at least 3 others is Thompson Electronics, Maritime Solutions. Businesses with terrific personnel, strong goods, that just need reorganization have great potential. Watching you demolish them wears me. Business, is it? He said softly. No, that's just avarice. It ends right now. I produced a folder for him. These are the last merging words. Wilson Ventures will come under increasing control of Summit Solutions. We will reorganize the corporation to concentrate on growing rather than destroying companies. Should you embrace the new course, you may remain a consultant. If not, page 3's sketch of your golden parachute is with shaking hands. He opened the folder. You covered everything. From the finest, I learnt, though not in the manner you meant. I grinned without warmth. Maya carried in a stack of newspapers after he departed. The disclosure by Summit was already generating news. The hidden CEO showed how one lady created a billion-dollar business under cover of anonymity. The Wilson family startled. The secret success narrative they were blind to. My phone buzzed once again, this time with a message that really counted. My mother had sent one letter. She had divorced Uncle Robert's brother years ago and cut off herself from the Wilson family's poison. You would show them, I knew constantly. The following few weeks were a swirl of adjustments. The board of Wilson Ventures eagerly welcomed Summit's fresh orientation. On the merger announcement, their stock price surged 40%. Companies that had avoided the Wilson name now looked for alliances. The narrative captured enough to satisfy the press. Aunt Patricia spun it as a wonderful family success story. Olivia told one reporter, "We knew she had promise." This only shows that the Wilson entrepreneurial mentality is in the blood. I answered by showing old footage of the family gathering from last year, when Mother had spent 20 minutes outlining for everyone why I would never be anything. The video gained popularity right away. After that, she stopped doing interviews. Claiming he had been in on it all along, Ethan tried damage management in his own style. Sadly for him, in that conference room, too many people had seen his surprised look. Other customers of his legal office started challenging his decisions. He was gently urged to take a month off of work. James adjusted the quickest. 2 weeks after the discovery, he came up to me with a business proposition. Over an uncomfortable meal, he said we could control the market jointly. The Wilson Summit Coalition would be relentless. Summit Solutions is not about that, I reminded him. We enhance. We do not rule. The peaceful times brought the genuine transformations. The young intern who thanked me emotionally for demonstrating that success did not call for sacrificing her values. The female CEOs who began corresponding and discussing their own experiences of being underappreciated. The business schools that asked me to address creating ethical success in a competitive environment. 3 months after the disclosure, I stood on a podium receiving the Business Innovation Award and surveyed the crowd. My mother was seated in the first row, grinning broadly with delight. Several of my former administrative assistants, all women who had supported my cover while pursuing their own careers inside Summit, sat behind her. Success isn't about who has more power, I advised the audience. It's about your use of the power you possess. I performed a role that caused influential individuals to undervalue me for 10 years. Though I could have come out sooner, I decided to wait until Summit Solutions was powerful enough to effect meaningful change. The true gratification came later that evening, although the clapping was deafening. Maya brought in a fascinating bit of news when I was working late in my office. Uncle Robert had just declared his retirement. His letter of resignation included an unexpected paragraph. True company success, according to my niece, is found in the good effect we produce, not in assets or acquisitions. I'm sorry it took losing control of my business to become wise. Leeching back in my chair, I considered the lengthy game I had participated in. 10 years of cautious preparation, of swallowing pride and playing small, had produced this moment. Summit Solutions changed company practices in addition to being profitable. The next family gathering would be very intriguing. I intended to hold it in Summit's main conference room, the same space where I had served coffee many times, observing and waiting for the ideal opportunity to present myself as exactly who I was. Maya knocked on my front door. Your 4 o'clock is found here. The CEO of Thomson Electronics, the business your uncle was looking at buying. I nodded. Show them inside. Then Maya, bring coffee to every one of them, the nice things produced by our chain. I rose to welcome my guests and spotted my reflection in the glass. There is no hiding now. No small-scale playing. Not despite, but rather because of my family's rejection, I had created something amazing. They had imparted knowledge to me that authority does not always provide what most people would find appealing. Sometimes it seems like a calm lady in a basic black dress pouring coffee and noting things while creating an empire right under everyone's eyes. The tabloids referred to it as retaliation. The company publications referred to as strategic genius. For me, however, it was just justice delivered one corporate takeover at a time with wonderfully made coffee. And somewhere, in a little office above a Chinese restaurant, my old desk still resides. I retain it as a reminder that success does not necessarily demand attention or wear fancy labels. Sometimes it works silently, gently, slowly, creating something remarkable while the world turns the other way. Success's actual secret is that, not the power you exhibit, but the power you develop in front of no one.